We really know nothing about these men. Did they discuss the kill list? That Obama has a kill list?
No.
Is assassinating people without due process, without any evidence, without,
Yeah.
Did they talk about the NDAA?
No.
They didn't talk about that. Did they talk about the evisceration of the post office?
No.
Do you know about that? Where it's the only corporation in America required to fund its pension 20 years in advance under this law passed by Bush and Congress under Bush that it's some kind of a post office.
So they're trying to destroy the advantage. What would be the advantage in that?
Well, Wall Street wants those pension funds, like they do to every other corporation. They basically.
And they would also give them access to people's correspondence.
Well,
because it would open up, if you erase the post office, what would take the place?
Well, they already have that. They already have that.
Yeah, with UPS and FedEx.
Well, they already have that with the post office. I mean, the thing is, everything is, the thing is there are more than 3,000 agencies, federal, state, and...
Our privacy doesn't exist anymore.
There are 3,000 agencies spying on the American people now. And local, state, and federal. It's like completely out of control. Talk about a psychopathic, paranoid entity.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get more insane than that.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is bankrupting the country at the same time, and the last figure I heard was 55% of the federal budget went for defense and military and pensions and veterans, all of that. I mean, I don't want to cut the veterans short, believe me.
And there's another thing that was not discussed at the debate between Romney and Obama was the defense spending.
Yeah, they're not going to touch it because the thing is, then he'd be weak on defense.
Yeah.
And everything's ego-based. You can't be shown to be weak.
Yeah.
That's a loser. See, everything's about winners and losers. The whole ego, the human ego is about winning or losing, being right, dominating, controlling.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the dominant psychological framework. I mean, in my work now, I see that it's all psychology. Everything comes down to psychology. And that the consensus reality is completely ego-based. And the ego sees threats that don't exist, projects threats that don't exist. It sees scarcity where there's abundance. And it seeks to control and dominate and win. So were there any questions there about the U.S. Al-Qaeda being on the side of NATO when they invaded Libya?
No.
Or is there any question of the
what we saw
of the funding of Al-Qaeda in Syria through Saudi Arabia and the Arab Emirates? No. There wouldn't be any of that. That's the whole giveaway on 9/11. Yeah. Robin Cook was foreign secretary under Tony Blair, and after the 7/7 bombings in London, the subway bombings, he came out with an op-ed piece that said that, the CIA created this Frankenstein, Al-Qaeda, which meant database. It was a database of terrorists that they ran, that they managed, that they ran for operations. They used them in Kosovo. They used them in Chechnya. Of course, after he said this, a month later he was dead while hiking on Defense Department property in England. So this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. I mean, and David Kelly being found supposedly death by suicide in the middle of the woods. His body is the Downing Street memo. This was the Downing Street memo. So these things are never discussed in the society. So how
it's relegated to the realm of conspiracy theory. Well, and it seems to me like the conversation has been stigmatized
Well, the CIA is a conspiracy institution. Of course, they're going to make that word anathema in the society. It's like what Noam Chomsky told me, Pravda in its wildest dreams could not conceive of such success. In its wildest dreams,
psychologically magnificent.
In propaganda that the American people, the propaganda operation in the United States. The American people are so propagandized. You know, I can't even talk to people about things because they're so misinformed, and they get so upset that we're just... So we have to come back to, well, what is real? It used to be the news organization's responsibility to fact check and verify and document. Let's see, documentary evidence of what is real. And this is what I try and get to in America's Divine Comedy. Come from what is real. Is, do we know that Osama bin Laden was really assassinated? Well, let's see the physical documentary evidence, the DNA, let's see the photographs. We used to get that, the press used to get that stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's whatever they say.
Take our word for it.
Take our word for it. Nobody even questions.
We dump them over the side and keep them with Islamic custom.
Yeah, bullshit. They've changed that story 3 or 4 times of what happened there. It's, you know, Webster Tarpley said he'll leave it to the theater critics to, you know, critique.
Yeah.
And then they put out these books by these guys who were there, and you know, about the operation.
Yeah.
Well, Osama bin Laden.
And actually, I've talked to some people who have read those books.
Yeah.
And it seems like, you know, the most popular book, No Easy Day.
Yeah.
The author takes the tone of criticizing Obama.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of saying that he's showboating the whole time, blah blah blah. You know, so what I find fascinating, you know, is you know, if you look at that from a theatrical point of view,
right?
You know, they've gone so far as even to include, to try to co-opt the criticism. You know, they didn't pull out a cheerleader to say, rah rah, Obama did the right thing and this is what we did, blah blah blah. No, they pulled out somebody who gives just enough.
It's called a limited hang-up.
Yeah.
In the CIA terms, a limited hang-up to give credibility to the propaganda.
Yeah. They make it seem like it's critical.
It's disinformation, but they put some truth in there.
Yeah.
Or somehow otherwise, the Pentagon Papers are a perfect example. I know the Pentagon Papers are held up as this great moment of American press, but actually most of what was in there was already known internationally.
Yeah.
And what's his name? The guy who spilled the beans for the Rand Corporation, the guy who released the Pentagon Papers.
G. Gordon. No.
Anyway, he worked for Rand Corporation, which is a big CIA contractor, and there was nothing in there about the Kennedy assassination. Nothing, and it put Ellsberg, Daniel Ellsberg was the name.
Okay.
It put the blame for the war, focused it on the military. So you always look at these things and say, well, who's not getting criticized here? Whose ox is getting gored? Who benefits from this? Well, of course, the CIA benefited from that. Also, WikiLeaks is the same thing. Who's getting, you know, yes, there's some harmful information there about the U.S.
but who's benefiting? The U.S. government.
Right, because, and who's being attacked? China, you know, there's nothing in there about the genocide.
Well, what they benefit from is it seems to me like is the justification in increasing their security and their reach.
And maybe turning off the internet sometime.
Yeah.
The thing is, who benefited, who was hit by the, you know, there was nothing in there about the genocide in the Gaza under Israel. There was nothing in there about 9/11. There was, you know, I mean, that helicopter video, well, stuff like that goes on every day in Iraq. There has been some stuff. This guy, Julian Assange, his family was involved in some kind of MK Ultra thing. Did you know about that? Where the kids were in the school were given LSD. His mother was part of this.
No, but
it's fascinating.
Can we put that on the side for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's a whole other line of conversation.
Yeah, I'm just rambling on.
Well, I mean, but it's fascinating to me.
So in other words, we know nothing about these guys.
Yeah.
And they're basically just symbols. You know, they're brands.
An analogy, perhaps, if I could offer.
Yeah.
you know, in the world, in the philosophical world debate and all that, you have the straw man argument where you basically, you know, it's a fallacy, you know, it's a false argument because you construct your opponent to be, you know, something they're not quite, like an empty shell. They can easily knock over.
Right.
So that's a straw man argument. What it seems to me is the way the propaganda has been working in this country and working very effectively is that they construct basically a slightly animated straw man in this quote-unquote liberal media that all of the conservative think tanks and, you know, demagogues come out with and
of course conservative corporations own.
Yeah, exactly. It's an animated straw man.
Right.
They create a slight liberal bias, you know, and enough of friction for, like, say, an entity like Fox News to take umbrage against. Therefore, you create an us versus them dichotomy, which, you know, but if you, nothing really revelatory comes out through that liberal media. All the times that would have been prime opportunities for them to challenge the neoconservative agenda, they laid down.
Well, the thing is, it's all choreographed.
Yeah.
You know, if we look back to Guarantee Bank, right after World War I, which was involved in extending World War I for money. But Guarantee Bank, at the same time, J.P. Morgan interests were funding Lenin with $1 million loan. They sent a Federal Reserve banker over there while there was an embargo. Okay, just completely ignored the U.S. embargo. Used the International Red Cross as the Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Made $1 million loan to Lenin, who just had a toehold in Moscow. That by no means was going to be the guy to, you know, carry Russia into the future. But that $1 million loan for propaganda greatly helped him. At the same time Morgan was doing that, it was funding John Reed for the Metropolitan Magazine and the Red Scare, funding the Red Scare in America. So what they do is they create the extremes to control the center. So the extremes are both choreographed. I mean, I think that's probably the earliest example I can think of. So they create the extremes, fund the extremes to control the center. And these are the gatekeepers. We talked about gatekeepers in one other time. On the left is Chomsky and Moyers and Nation magazine. Okay? And I have to say, Chris Hedges and those people, they're not going to criticize the official story on 9/11. They're not going to criticize is the Arab Spring CIA astroturf, or is it really indigenous social revolution? They're not going to question WikiLeaks. They're not going to ask any questions about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to cry bloody murder, howl hegemony, blah 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 blah. But they're not going to do anything that's going to fundamentally change the dialogue or the context of the understanding of the meanings. And of course, on the right, we know who those wingnuts are over there. But it's gotten so bad that, you know, I wonder if Ronald Reagan could be elected today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because after 30 years of Rush Limbaugh and Republican right-wing radio and the corporatization of America, you know, the anti-union, I talked to one guy about unions, and he just hates them. He knows nothing about them, but he hates them. He's been trained to hate them.
Yeah.
Is this picking up okay?
I believe so.
Just completely brainwashed. People are completely brainwashed.
Yeah.
And
I was in a conversation with someone about this last night, actually, and you know, we got off onto a semantic discussion about brainwashing versus brain programming.
Right.
And it's actually like, yeah, there's a brainwashing aspect. I think that comes through, and what happens is a dynamic in this culture of accepting cognitive dissonance, where they tell you one thing. You know, an example is the Clean Skies Act that Bush passed actually loosened. Or
Reagan's Peacekeeper missile.
Right, exactly. That sort of thing is directly out of 1984.
Yeah, and also in this film V for Vendetta, peace through war or something.
Yeah.
It's just like total nonsense.
Yeah, but people accept it. We're taking the fight to the enemy. We're fighting for freedom. Freedom isn't free. These sort of catchphrases that actually train. I think what it does is it destroys the ability, the bullshit filter on our own brains. It deactivates it.
Right.
The more that we accept these cognitive dissonances.
Right, we're not trained to think critically.
Yeah, and then that opens up the brain for programming.
Well, and you have the deliberate. I remember in the 80s under Reagan, CBS News, the special interests in America had always been the big spenders, the Rockefellers, the special interests. In the 80s under Reagan, there was a shift in meaning of the phrase special interests. Now it meant this little splinter groups of the Democratic Party. The gays, the women, the this, the that, the unions, the blah, blah, blah. So those were now the special interests. That's newspeak. That's 1984. Changing the meanings of things. And it was like right in your face.
Yeah.
And, so the changing of meanings, the changing of history. Of course, there's been the deliberate dumbing down of Americans in the educational system. Charlotte Iserbyt has written a book called The
Spelling on that?
Iserbyrt. I can give you all that. She was an official in the Reagan Department of Education, and she talked about the behavior modification programs that were going on, where she talked about this. There's this lifeboat thing where they have 12 people in a lifeboat, and there's not enough food or water, and somebody's got to go. The idea is somebody's got to go overboard. Anyway, she talked about this and how the student came up with a solution where no one would have to die, and that was ruled out. So what they
said that you can't solve it.
Right, you can't solve it that way.
Someone must go.
Right. So the behavior modification, the breakdown of values, and this is what they found only about 15%.
Just that exercise alone, that shows you what they're trying to achieve. They're trying to achieve a dehumanization.
Right, exactly.
The natural human instinct is to save everyone.
Well, right. In World War II, after World War II, they only found 15% of the soldiers were willing to kill somebody. And the Defense Department said, "Oh, we can't have this." And by Vietnam, it was up to 70 or 80. By Gulf War, it was 90%. Now they completely break down the values, human values. So they basically make these people psychopathic, where they're willing to, they're killing without remorse, and life has no value. And the video games, I just watched this thing called the trailer for Black Ops. What is it? Combat 2. This video game. I could get the name of it before you leave. Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
I think they're up to number 4 now.
Black Ops 2. I saw the trailer for this thing, and this is just insanity.
It might as well be a training film.
Well, it's a training for running the Predator machines.
Yeah.
It's what it is. Yeah. And this, I talked to a young guy here who was going to go into I was letting him use my computer. He's looking for work. I was talking to him about he was going to go in, sign up for the military, not only because of he's a terrible time finding a job. They're all minimum wage, and so he was saying he's going to the military. I said, well, have you considered the fact that I said, why do you want to go? I said, I don't know.
Steady job.
And I said, well,
steady job.
But also, it's like it's like something to do and blah blah blah. But I said, do you really want to kill people? Do you really want to be part of a system of death and destruction that's purpose is to kill and destroy? I mean, do you really want to? Anyway, he thought about it and decided not to. But anyway, we have created a culture of death. Here in New London, if they cancel those submarines, what's going to happen? New London, it's like an addiction. New London cannot live without those nuclear submarine contracts.
Yes.
So, and everybody's going to fight for those nuclear submarine contracts.
But what do you need for those nuclear submarines to have a place to go?
But the thing is, they're really obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not obsolete in terms of the technology, but in warfare, are they really? You know, do we really?
Do we have a national enemy that functions like that?
I mean, we don't have it. You know, we don't have. The United States has no natural enemies, and of course now they're planning war with China, our biggest trading partner, and Russia later after that. Brzezinski and
again, straight out in 1984, really.
Well, these guys sit around and war game this stuff in this 10th century mindset.
Yeah.
It's the same old mindset. It's like a 1,000-year-old mindset.
Yeah.
And it's a zero-sum game, and it's always it's like playing the game Risk. It's like children playing Risk.
Yeah.
And they actually game these things into existence.
Yeah.
Because, once you become starting to be prepared for these different game scenarios, you're creating a context that gives rise to the event itself.
Yeah.
Either one you're creating deliberately or one you're imagining into existence through your paranoia. For instance, in quantum physics, there's something called the observer effect. And as energy builds up, and of course we know about synchronicity and things like this, that there's meaningful coincidence between disconnected events.